He moves a certain way, and if you're not used to seeing that, that's where you get knocked the fuck out.
Mauricio, Ruffy, Arman, Tsarukyan.
Arman's got to find his way across the distance, get his hands on him, and to get him to the ground. Because if he does stand with them, he's got to deal with that.
Yeah.
You know, the weird movements. Like, you see it, and then when you actually get in there with somebody, it's like the way TJ moves. He moves a certain way, and if you're not used to seeing that, that's where you get knocked the fuck out, right? So I think Arman needs to get him to the ground, and then just do what BSD did to him.
Arman needs to put Ruffy on his back foot. You can't let him have that space and be creative like Esteban did to an extent without getting caught. But like going forward, putting him on his back foot because he wants that space. He wants to feint. He wants to spin. He wants to be creative. Yeah. But if you keep him on his heels and keep him reacting to your movement, he can't be that creative.
Are you happy about this opponent? Because I feel like there's a lot of people out there that are saying that you're putting a lot of risk on this fight.
Yeah, it's a risky fight. Not a lot of people knows him. When I say I'm fighting with Ruffy, they say who's Ruffy? I'm saying, I mean, he beat Chandler, Fiziev, you know, and people don't know him, but he is so dangerous. And sometimes I'm making laugh. This is Ruffy is a Vazinha from football. Like, he looks like a Vazinha, and like people is checking who is Vazinha, and like he's a football player. I say, yeah, I'm fighting with a football player, and like.
What Arman said that was interesting to me was that Charles Oliveira can't knock him out and Mauricio Ruffy can. Yeah. Now, a lot of people are thinking Arman's going to walk all over Ruffy, so I think he's doing a good job in selling the fight if it's nothing else. And he's right about that, by the way. Yeah. Ruffy is not Charles on the ground. No. Make no mistake about that. But Charles is not Ruffy when it comes to striking. With the accuracy, with the power, with the ability to be creative, Mauricio Ruffy brings an interesting wrinkle to the game that Arman Tsarukyan is going to have to contend with. And he said, my dad gets nervous when I fight, so I want to end this fight as fast as possible. You don't want to be on the feet mixing it up with Ruffy for too long. We saw him dismantle Michael Chandler. Now, can Arman get him down and hold him down and maybe submit him? I think that's probably what most people will think, and maybe my prediction is leaning more towards that. We'll do tape study, obviously, and do deeper dives into this fight, but I'm actually really looking forward to the fight. Contrary to a lot of popular belief, I think that Ruffy's working on what he needs to work on as far as takedown defense. Is there enough time? I don't know. We're going to find out. That's the beautiful thing about this sport. But for every second that fight is on the feet, it's dangerous for Arman Tsarukyan.
Arman versus Ruffy. If Ruffy beats Arman, he's gonna fight Justin Gaethje next year. As unlikely as that is, let's be honest here, this is probably gonna be a very one-sided fight, stylistically. After seeing what BSD did to him, this fight against Arman, it's gonna be bad, man. I'm gonna be honest, man, I think this is one of the more one-sided fights you can make, because although Mauricio Ruffy is an excellent striker, he's very versatile, has flashy techniques, can knock you out with so many shots, his performances are stellar, but that's mostly against guys who weren't able to take him down. We saw what BSD did to him. BSD bullied Ruffy out there, and he's a far cry from Arman Tsarukyan's wrestling. Like, it's a whole different level. Arman's the best wrestler in this division, and the only guy that's close is Gamrot, but the difference is Arman's a lot more dangerous when it goes to the ground. He beats you up bad, cuts you open with elbows, tries to knock you out with ground and pound. He has excellent submissions, very top heavy. The guy's incredible.
Arman just said that he wants you to keep making sure that you train how to tap in your camp for this fight. What strategies are you looking to take into the fight with Arman, and do you think you can keep this on the feet?
I'm pretty confident of the things that I can bring. When I go into the octagon, I know what I want to do, but it's a new sport for me as well. I learn every day, I get better every day, and I think I'm evolving a lot, and I love this sport. I love to do what I do. I love to train, and my goal when I get into that octagon is to turn people off. I want to turn off the other guy, just put him to sleep. There have been a lot of good wrestlers out there that have been put to sleep with the knockout, and that's what I want to continue to do. I know what I want to do. I always aim to do what I want to do, and that's my objective, is to turn people off, and I plan to do that again.
You can turn off only your phone.
Arman has blown the f up, dude.
True.
He's a massive star now.
True. I watch his YouTube videos. When he lands in LA, he goes immediately to an exotic rental car place and rents a Lamborghini and drives it to the training lab.
It's not the way it's supposed to work, but he pulls it off.
Bro, good luck with that guy. Built like a Greek god, can wrestle like a fucking elite top-tier wrestler, and he can strike, and he can submit you. That is not a guy that grew up with a billionaire dad who could just go buy it Lamborghini with his credit card if he wants to. Look at the fuck. Shut the fuck up, man.
Great
just
body.
Shut up.
Great body.
That's ridiculous. That makes me want to just quit and eat potatoes all day.
Something about Arman Tsarukyan versus Mauricio Ruffy has caught the attention of the MMA world, because this is not simply a fight between two talented lightweight contenders. It is a matchup where two very different approaches could collide, and that is exactly why analysts are having such a difficult time agreeing on who walks away with the victory at UFC 331. On one side, you have Arman Tsarukyan, a fighter known for his ability to mix wrestling, pressure, physical strength, and increasingly dangerous striking. On the other, Mauricio Ruffy represents the kind of explosive offensive threat who can make a fight completely change in a matter of seconds. And when those styles meet, the biggest question is not simply who is better, it is whose game gets established first. That is why the prediction discussion around this matchup is so interesting. Analysts within the combat sports community have pointed out that Tsarukyan cannot afford to treat Ruffy like a conventional striker, while Ruffy cannot assume that his speed and power alone will be enough to keep Tsarukyan away for the entire fight. Every phase creates a different problem, and one mistake could completely shift the momentum. For Tsarukyan, the most obvious path is to make this fight uncomfortable from the opening exchange. He has the ability to close distance, change levels, put an opponent against the cage, and force them to defend rather than freely attack. That matters enormously against a fighter like Ruffy because explosive strikers are at their most dangerous when they have space, rhythm, and confidence. If Tsarukyan can repeatedly make Ruffy work defensively, the fight could begin to look very different. Instead of allowing Ruffy to set his feet and launch combinations, Tsarukyan can make him think about takedowns, clinches, level changes, and positional battles. Even when a takedown does not happen, the threat of one can influence how a striker moves and how aggressively he commits to his offense. And that brings us to one of the most important tactical questions of the entire matchup. Can Ruffy maintain his offensive effectiveness while constantly having to respect Tsarukyan's wrestling? Because Ruffy's biggest opportunities may come when Tsarukyan is forced to enter from too far away or becomes predictable with his pressure. A fighter with speed and offensive creativity does not need dozens of openings. Sometimes he only needs one clean moment. Ruffy's striking presents a completely different problem. His ability to generate offense quickly means Tsarukyan cannot simply walk forward without consequences. Pressure is only effective when it is controlled. If Tsarukyan charges into exchanges without managing the distance, he could give Ruffy exactly the type of opportunity he wants. Several respected voices have noted that this is where the matchup becomes particularly fascinating. Tsarukyan may have the more obvious route toward controlling the fight physically, but Ruffy's ability to create danger during those transitions could make every entry costly. And then there is the mental side of the fight. A matchup like this can become a battle of patience. Tsarukyan may want Ruffy to overextend. Ruffy may want Tsarukyan to become impatient and force an opening. Whoever manages that battle better could gain a major advantage before the fight even reaches its later stages. For Tsarukyan, another key factor is his ability to adapt. A fighter who relies on only one approach becomes much easier to read, but Tsarukyan has the tools to change the texture of a fight. He can strike, wrestle, clinch, pressure, and make his opponent constantly reset. That versatility could become increasingly important if Ruffy has success early. Imagine Ruffy having a strong opening round. The crowd is reacting, his confidence is rising, and Tsarukyan is struggling to find the right distance. Does Tsarukyan abandon his original plan, or does he stay patient, continue forcing the wrestling exchanges, and trust that the accumulated physical work will eventually change the fight? That decision could define the contest, but Ruffy has his own questions to answer. Can he remain calm if Tsarukyan takes away the space he needs? Can he defend repeated takedown attempts without allowing his offensive output to disappear? And perhaps most importantly, can he punish Tsarukyan's entries enough that the threat of pressure becomes a liability for the Armenian fighter? Those are not small questions, because if Ruffy can consistently make Tsarukyan pay for his entries, suddenly the entire wrestling game becomes more complicated. Tsarukyan would have to think twice before committing, and that hesitation could give Ruffy more opportunities to control the striking exchanges. The general sentiment among professionals who have studied this closely is that neither fighter can afford to fight the opponent's fight for too long. If Tsarukyan turns this into a prolonged battle of distance striking, he could be giving Ruffy more opportunities than necessary. If Ruffy allows himself to spend too much time defending against the cage or fighting from compromised positions, he could give Tsarukyan the control he needs to take over. That is why the first few minutes could be incredibly important. The opening exchanges may tell us immediately which fighter is dictating the terms. If Tsarukyan is able to get his hands on Ruffy early and make him defend, that could create confidence and force Ruffy into a more conservative approach. But if Ruffy stops those entries and lands clean counters, Tsarukyan may have to reconsider how aggressively he pressures forward. There is also the question of cardio and physical wear. A fast, explosive fighter can be extremely difficult to deal with early, but a fight can become a different challenge as minutes accumulate. Constant wrestling exchanges, clinch work, defensive scrambling, and pressure can drain energy even when there are no spectacular moments. For Tsarukyan, that could be part of the long-term strategy. He does not necessarily need to dominate every exchange. He may simply need to make Ruffy repeatedly work, force him to defend, and gradually reduce the freedom of his striking. For Ruffy, the opposite may be true. He needs to make the early opportunities count. Every clean combination, every successful counter, and every moment where he forces Tsarukyan to hesitate can help preserve the space necessary for his offense. And this is where prediction becomes difficult. If you only look at offensive explosiveness, Ruffy has a very compelling argument. His speed and striking creativity create a constant threat, and Tsarukyan cannot afford to make careless mistakes while trying to close distance. But if you look at the matchup as a complete MMA contest, Tsarukyan has another set of advantages to consider. His ability to blend wrestling with striking gives him multiple ways to win rounds, disrupt rhythm, and force Ruffy into situations where his preferred weapons become harder to use. That does not make the outcome automatic. MMA is rarely that simple. The fighter with the better theoretical game plan still has to execute it, while another professional athlete is actively trying to destroy that plan. One clean strike can change everything. One failed takedown can create a scramble. One moment of fatigue can turn control into danger. That is why this matchup deserves serious attention rather than an easy prediction. There is also more at stake here than simply adding another win to the record. A convincing performance could dramatically change the trajectory of either man's career. For Tsarukyan, a dominant victory would reinforce his position as one of the fighters who belongs in the highest levels of the lightweight conversation. For Ruffy, defeating a fighter with Tsarukyan's skill set would send an equally important message about his ability to compete against increasingly difficult opposition. So where does the prediction finally land? If Ruffy can keep the fight at long range, force Tsarukyan to enter recklessly, and consistently punish those entries, he has a realistic path to producing a major result. His speed could create moments that completely change the fight before Tsarukyan gets comfortable. But if Tsarukyan stays disciplined, mixes his entries, uses the threat of wrestling to limit Ruffy's striking freedom, and avoids taking unnecessary risks, the fight could gradually move in his direction. That is the lean that makes the most sense from a complete matchup perspective. Tsarukyan's ability to control where the fight takes place gives him more avenues to victory. He does not have to win every striking exchange. He can make Ruffy defend, force him to work, and turn the fight into a physical and tactical battle over multiple rounds. My prediction is Arman Tsarukyan to win, but not because Ruffy lacks the weapons to hurt him. Quite the opposite. Ruffy is dangerous precisely because Tsarukyan will have to respect what happens every time he enters the pocket. I would expect Tsarukyan to prioritize pressure and wrestling, use his striking to disguise his entries, and look for opportunities to control Ruffy rather than simply chase a finish. Ruffy's best chance is to stay composed, maintain distance, and make every aggressive entry expensive. And that is what makes UFC 331 so compelling. Will Tsarukyan's all-around MMA game eventually overwhelm Ruffy's explosive striking, or will Ruffy's speed and power prove that one dangerous striker can completely disrupt the game plan of a high-level wrestler? That is the question, because if Tsarukyan wins, the conversation about his place among the lightweight contenders becomes even louder. If Ruffy wins, the entire division may have to start looking at him very differently. So now I want to hear your prediction. Does Arman Tsarukyan control Mauricio Ruffy with his wrestling and pressure, or does Ruffy shock everyone by keeping the fight standing and finding the decisive opening? Let me know who you believe wins at UFC 331, and, most importantly, tell me how you think they get it done. Subscribe for more combat sports news, fight analysis, reactions, and predictions.